The Wall Street Journal recently announced the original Moana film is the most streamed movie of all time, quote, for a total of more than 1 billion hours, which amounts to one person sitting through the movie 775 million times, or watching Moana for 150,000 years straight. But is the sequel worth watching once? I'm David DiCerto, and join me as we take a look at this girl power sequel through a Catholic lens. Historically, Disney refrained from slapping a number 2 on any of its official princess films. Oh sure, there's been a slew of cash grab straight-to-video sequels, but for the most part, princesses in theatrical features were content to live happily ever after once the final credits rolled. That long-standing tradition changed in 2019 with the release of Frozen 2, paving the way for Moana 2, the sequel to the 2016 animated musical, which, among other themes, was about, well, breaking with tradition. The film returns to the South Seas of the original, with Moana, once again played by Auli'i Carvalho, a little bit older and a little bit wiser, having become an expert wayfinder or expert navigator. In the first film, Moana, whose name is Maori for sea, now spends her time island hopping in search of lost populations who, together with her own people on Motunui, had once made up a flourishing and united seafaring federation. She's given the sacred title of Tautai, the top wayfinder, a revered position higher even than her father Tui, the island's chief. During her anointing ceremony, she experiences a mystical vision, in which her ancestors task her with a perilous quest to find a mythical sunken island and break an evil sea god's curse, thereby averting her people from certain disaster.
Now I kind of miss the lava monster.
She takes to the open waters with a motley crew of locals. Yep, Pet Pig Pua and Hey Hey the Rooster are back on board, and is eventually reunited with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's tattooed demigod Maui.
Maui and Moana, together again.
Together, they save the day and sing a few songs. Okay, so what do I think? As a rule, sequels are never as good as the original. Okay, sure, there's always exceptions, but they're rare, and this film ain't one of them. The things I liked about the original aren't as good this time around, and the things I didn't like, well, it's more of the same, if not worse. I'm sure there are parents wondering if this is suitable viewing for youngsters. I'll just say that I generally like to share some honest and hopefully balanced thoughts and leave it up to parents' judgment. Disney was once synonymous for wholesome family entertainment, but in recent years, the studio has become a lightning rod of controversy in the ongoing culture wars with progressive agendas and ideologies sometimes creeping onto the screen. So, for concerned parents, yes, I do have some reservations about certain themes and elements of the film, which we'll touch on in a minute. But also, yes, there's still enough in the movie to make for somewhat satisfying family viewing. Why only somewhat? Well, it starts out promising, and visually the movie is pretty to look at, including a sweeping opening image as the camera soars over turquoise tropical waves. But it quickly becomes apparent there's not much, or at least not much new, under the glistening surface. The delightful oceanic world and characters created in the original were interesting, and there was certainly room for further exploration by Samoan writer-director Dana Ledoux-Miller. But this latest offering just kind of feels like, well, like Disney was too lazy to cook dinner, so it just decided to reheat what it had in the fridge. Right down to the Kokomora Coconut Pirates, which is essentially what happened, as Disney had originally planned this story as an animated series for its Disney Plus platform, and only pivoted to the big screen later in the process. And to be honest, the film kind of has an episodic vibe to it, rather than the strong plot and characters that have defined many past Disney classics, including the original Moana. Another hallmark of Disney films has always been their songs, and here there's just not enough wind in the soundtrack sails, despite composers Mark Mancina and Opatea Foa'i returning, joined by an all-female songwriting team, a historic first for a Disney film of Abigail Bartow and Emily Bear, who replaced Lin-Manuel Miranda. Lyrically, Can I Get a Chee-Hoo is fun, but it's no You're Welcome. Beyond feels less inspired than How Far I'll Go, and nothing here shines quite like the surreal silliness of Shiny by the Crab Tomatoa. Now, I'm not saying that the film is completely lost at sea. Disney's still gonna make like a gazillion dollars off it when all's said and done, but while watching it, I felt I had sailed these waters before, with all its positives and negatives, of which it has both. On the plus side, celebrating diverse cultures, in this case that of Indigenous Pacific Islanders, is commendable and very Catholic. After all, Catholic means universal and embraces all God's human family. So I applaud Disney for telling stories from different cultural perspectives. The original could be seen as a tender coming-of-age story about a young girl yearning for adventure. It's an age-old theme. Lots of fairy tales involve young protagonists eager to escape the humdrumness of ordinary life. Heck, who can forget a certain farm boy from Tatooine, looking longingly at the setting twin suns, dreaming of, well, of more than life on a planet furthest from the bright center of the universe can offer him. But while Luke Skywalker eventually learned wisdom from old Obi-Wan, and then from an even older Yoda, both Moana films suffer from what my good friend and fellow Catholic film critic Stephen Greydanis calls the Junior Knows Best syndrome. To be fair, loads of animated films of recent vintage are guilty of this. In the original, Moana's father, the island's chief, mind you, must learn from his young daughter. Here, she's elevated beyond the dad's authority altogether. At least in the original, Moana's parents had some character depth and backstory. They had something to do. Here, parental authority figures are pretty much set dressings and absent from much of the film, except for the spirit of her grandmother, who, as in the earlier film, encourages Moana to choose her own path. Gone are the days of Jiminy Cricket's guidance.
And always let your conscience be your guide.
Which brings me to my second concern, the celebration of pushing past boundaries, whether geographical or societal norms, in pursuit of some greater self-autonomy. I'm not talking about the intrepid spirit that helped us cross oceans and land on the moon. I'm talking about something different, emblematic in the very titles of both movies' anthems of empowerment. How Far I'll Go, from the original, an absolute banger of a song, and this follow-up's far less catchy Beyond.
What lies beyond?
Is the Beyond the film is talking about really a coral reef or a moral reef? Is it celebrating that intrepid can-do spirit that got us to space, or a siren song that invites us to challenge the limited horizons that traditional cultures impose? It's a recurring theme in recent Disney films. Remember Let It Go from 2013's Frozen, when Elsa belts out, "It's time to see what I can do, to test the limits and break through. No right, no wrong, no rules for me, I'm free." Here, a mercurial character named Matangi encourages Moana in a song appropriately entitled Get Lost that
The rules are ours to break. Come on, babe. It's time to get lost.
a piece of advice that Moana initially rejects, but by the song's end, warms up to. There's plenty of genuinely positive messages to take out of both Moana movies. Moana is brave and mature and responsible, all good traits for young viewers. Moana loves her family and her people. And Lord knows we need positive portrayals of strong female characters that teach young girls And boys, lessons about believing in themselves and realizing their true self-worth and potential. Hey, Pope Benedict said we're made for greatness. But are messages about breaking rules in pursuit of some postmodern self-liberation really what we need to be serving up to young minds? I might have been more bummed with Grandmother Tala, a beautiful character in both films, being representative of a spiritual reverence for the past, and at the same time, the voice encouraging Moana to go beyond tradition. But again, the narrative here is so meh that it's really not worth making a big deal about. It was a real lost opportunity to build on Moana's connection with what G.K. Chesterton called the democracy of the dead. Now, there's been criticism about this film and the original for its alleged identity politics, gender roles, feminist underpinnings. Moana, we learned in the first film, doesn't like being pigeonholed as a princess. But I think that's all missing a deeper issue, at least for Catholic viewers. I call it the problem of the film's spiritual subtext. To be clear, both Moana movies are woven through with a sincere spirituality, quite beautiful at times. And no, I don't think the film is promoting Polynesian polytheism any more than Disney's 1997 Hercules was encouraging worship of the pantheon of Greek gods. But this film's subtext certainly promotes a certain Disneyfied view of religion, one that prioritizes, or at least emphasizes, a humanistic spirituality over one that makes our salvation dependent on the divine. It's not the demigod Maui who saves the day, but the fully human Moana. In fact, her people's faith is dependent precisely on her humanity, which leads to a bigger question. The whole concept of God in the film, embodied this time by the evil Nalu, is one of antagonism with humanity. His curse literally separated the various peoples of the ocean because he feared a united humanity as posing a threat to him. A marked difference from the Christian concept of God, who, as the source of all being, is not only not in competition with his creation, but who entered into history to bring all humanity into a unity of love, that all may be one. Moana talks a lot about finishing her people's story by defeating Nalu and bringing them back together to the raised sacred island. Our story of salvation hinges on God breaking the curse of sin, not by raising an island, but himself upon a cross. And in the poetic words of Scripture, bringing together all peoples not on a sacred island, but upon God's holy mountain. If anything, the film promotes a eco-pantheism, with the ocean itself being a life-giving character. I'll save that discussion, as well as the film's innate Manichaean dualism and a quasi-deifying of Moana at the climax, for another day. Suffice to say, Moana's outrigger canoe and the bark of St. Peter clearly sail two different theological oceans. But that's not to say parents can't harvest some things of real value from these waters. I don't want to be too hard on the film. There's moments that could prompt good discussions with children. There's some beautiful images that speak to a genuine, albeit pagan, sense of wonder, and the world is being enchanted, something sorely lacking in our increasingly disenchanted culture. It also has an admirable appreciation for community and a connection and continuity with those who have gone before us. A moving scene of the spirits of ancestors coming to Moana's assistance in her moment of need has resonances of the communion of saints. That scene is preceded by a tender moment of what seems like Maui offering up a sincere sung prayer. Look, the truth is most of the stuff I'm talking about will go way over the heads of most young viewers. Though, I should also note that as with the original, there are some intense sequences that younger or sensitive children may find frightening. Older children may benefit from parents talking through some of these points before or after heading to the multiplex. Moana 2, like the ocean, can be enjoyable fun, as long as you're aware of the potential riptides below the zippy animation and zany action sequences. In the end, Maui raises an island, but this film, unfortunately, doesn't raise the bar. Still, parents could do worse in terms of entertainment. Until next time, I'm David DiCerto, and this is The Catholic Lens. And don't miss a single episode of The Catholic Lens. Follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And for full videos of our film reviews, subscribe to Castletown Media on YouTube. Stay connected and join the conversation in the comments.